Journey South County. Pastor Jason here. Well, let's think a little bit more about the Apostles' Creed. We want to meditate on those lines that say that Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. In the last video, we thought about the historical events, the historical reality that are behind these events. And we thought about the theological significance of them and what they're going to say, especially at the last part of this creed. But I just want to think for a moment about the word crucified. I think we, in some ways, especially in our day, 2,000 years later, are a little bit desensitized by our familiarity with the cross. We don't fully understand what the Romans were seeking to do by crucifying someone and why this was such a scandal. Rome used crucifixion to bring fear to their enemies. They sought to also publicly humiliate and bring shame upon those that they were executing in this way. Now, I'm not going to go into all the gory details, but you can imagine the trauma that it would bring to one's body to be nailed through the wrist, the lower part of the hand, so that you could pull yourself up, and through the feet. You see, you didn't die in crucifixion by bleeding to death. You didn't die because you were just exposed to the sun, though all of those things would be painful. You died because you couldn't get air into your lungs, and so you actually suffocated. You'd have to push yourself up, and when eventually you were unable any longer to do that, you would die a very cruel and slow, painful death. But on top of that slow, painful death, you were crucified naked. They wanted to make an example of you. And in doing that, that is why even in a polite company, you would never mention crucifixion. It was like a bad word to talk about. No one would ever walk by someone being crucified and think, I should make artwork out of this. It'd be trauma. It'd be like PTSD kind of a situation to see what was happening to someone and to hear the agony that they were going through. In fact, that's why in so many ways, those that the early church was preaching to found it so scandalous, so crazy that the early church was confessing that by Jesus' death on the cross, they had received salvation and life and peace, that their sins were taken away because of what had happened on a cross. But when you coupled that with the transformation in the early believers, people wanted to listen. They wanted to find out more about what was happening. Take what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 17. He says, "For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, and not with the words of eloquent wisdom, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God." I mean, it's pretty amazing when you begin to think about it. We sing songs at our church about the cross. You can see in Philippians chapter 2, it's a hymn inside chapter 2 that's devoted to what's happening in Jesus' coming to earth and his humiliation, but that humiliation ends in his death on the cross. We're going to sing about in eternity the cross. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. We're going to talk about that he's worthy to receive glory and power and honor because of the cross. Interestingly, Isaiah, 700 years before the crucifixion, wrote these words, "But he was pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." And we want to think more about that in the next video, as we think about what was happening on the cross. Why did the cross bring, and those moments on the cross, bring salvation to us? We want to think about atonement. But let me say this as I go. Let's be a cross-shaped people. Let's meditate upon the wonder of what happened. In Christ's shame, he brought us honor and salvation and life. So see you next video.